Hello and welcome to another edition of the Ask Dr. Pickel show, where we help find answers for patients with chronic conditions, chronic problems. Many people who have gone many places and tried many things. Today, kind of interesting topic for everyone that I want to go over. And I'm bringing this one up because I had some people say, hey, could you just talk about this briefly? And I said, absolutely. So always excited to go over this information. So Hashimoto's, female hormone issues, how does that connect? How does everything come together there? And what are some problems that can relate to this? So we want to dive into this today. All right. And, we're going to start off kind of going over a few basics here. In fact, this is, I would say I had a patient recently. She not only having signs of hypothyroidism, low thyroid, which her doctor had put her on Synthroid. And she was still feeling lousy, and they changed the dose multiple times. They tried some, not only Synthroid, but before that they had used levothyroxine. They had she wanted to do natural thyroid hormones. But of course her endocrinologist was like, no way, that stuff's crazy. Here's Synthroid. And then of course she still felt bad. So they start adjusting the dose of Synthroid. But again, she's kind of, after going through months and months of that, she's getting pretty frustrated. And on top of her thyroid symptoms, she is getting a lot of female hormone symptoms. Which we're going to kind of go through how that can connect, because, her question was, hey, are these related? And of course, our answer was, absolutely, they can be. So, all right. So let's kind of dive right in with some explanations of things. Let's see if we can do that. All right. So first of all, let's kind of define Hashimoto's. And many of you watching this probably already know what that is. Hashimoto's is an autoimmune condition. And, the thing about Hashimoto's is, about in the United States, over 90% of people who have hypothyroidism have Hashimoto's. So kind of interesting there that that's such a high number. And so little is talked about it, and it's dealt with so little. And again, don't think of this as, well, let's put it this way. From a conventional medical side of things, they're basically saying, hey, Hashimoto's, thyroid problem. She's got really hypothyroidism due to the Hashimoto's. What tools do they have in their toolbox? Well, thyroid medication. And that's about it. So basically, the only thing that thyroid medication can influence is your TSH number and your free T4 number. So they're really going to just look at those things. Again, it just kind of revolves around that, no matter how you feel. And I would say this patient that kept complaining to her doctor saying, hey, I don't feel good, this and this and this. And the doctor was like, well, I'll send you to your gynecologist to look a little more at your female hormones, even though it's an endocrinologist. And then I'll also prescribe you an antidepressant, because of course she was complaining. She was like, I don't want an antidepressant. I'm not depressed. I just feel lousy. Again, I won't go on and on with the story, but I could tell she was very frustrated with the track that she was being put on there. So, all right. So then when we talk about female hormones, let's get a couple of basics in play before we get into the details here of it all and how it's connected. So female hormones, of course, as you all know, I'm sure, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, Okay, so estrogen and progesterone made in the ovaries and uterus. Where's testosterone made? Where do women get testosterone? Your adrenal glands. All right, comes from the adrenal glands. So they're the main manufacturer of that. Now, also another question here. What happens when estrogen progesterone production stops? What happens when the ovaries and uterus decide to retire or you get a hysterectomy? So do you just go without? How come some women can go without and do just fine? How come some women go through menopause or have a hysterectomy? They're like, I didn't notice anything. I didn't have any problems at all. And some women are like, I feel like a truck hit me. Now I've got all these symptoms of menopause, change of life. So what happens there? Basically, those hormones come from the adrenal glands. Same glands that make that. Now, of course, there's another hormone that the adrenal glands make, or other hormones, let's put it that way, that the adrenal glands make that turn into estrogen and progesterone. And it's a different type of estrogen and a different type of progesterone. And that's why if you're menopausal and you get your estrogen and progesterone tested, it's not always going to read the same unless they test specific estrogens and progesterones. We won't get into that as much. All right. So just to kind of know, where those basics come from, the basics of Hashimoto's, the basics of what is back to Hashimoto's. What is Hashimoto's? What is this? If you're kind of new to this. So again, Hashimoto's means my immune system is attacking my thyroid gland. Again, why is it doing that? Something is triggering your immune system. And again, it's usually something that isn't identified easily on most conventional tests. And so it's finding out what is driving the immune system to attack you. Why does your immune system suddenly not like your thyroid? And then also, what are things that can spark your immune system to attack your thyroid more? And those are the things that really have to be dealt with and found out. So Hashimoto's, again, is not really a thyroid problem. And that's what you have to understand. Hashimoto's not a thyroid problem. It's an immune system problem. Totally an immune system problem. Now, if it destroys or inflames your thyroid enough, yeah, you'll run low in thyroid hormones. Or if it's inflaming your thyroid hormones could go up and down, because as you inflame, you could release more. As the inflammation drops down, you could release less. So again, that can really vary depending on your situation. So enough about the basics there. Let's get into this. So in the middle here, of course, we have Hashimoto's, and we'll call it female endocrine web. I'm going to call this a web, like a spider web, because there's a lot of connections here that we're gonna go over. So one corner of this web, and a lot of this is just out of the research. Research that how does Hashimoto's affect these other areas of the body? And one thing that it can do is it can impair FSH and LH. Okay, so what is FSH and LH? FSH is follicle stimulating hormone. LH is luteinizing hormone. So follicle stimulating hormone, luteinizing hormone, these are hormones made in your brain. Basically, your brain an area in your brain called your hypothalamus says to an area of your brain called your pituitary gland, make FSH and LH, because we need more estrogen or progesterone. So if you make more FSH, you're going to get increases in estrogen. If you make more LH, you're going to get increases in progesterone. There's this feedback loop. There's this communication circuit between your ovaries and uterus and your brain. And it's important that that communication circuit works and that these hormones are released properly, or we get imbalance. Now, when you have Hashimoto's, this can inflame not only the thyroid, but also Hashimoto's is known to affect the communication loops between the brain. This hypothalamus, there's what are called inflammatory cytokines, and this inflammation affects this communication feedback loop, not only of your TSH, which is also made in the hypothalamus, or well, your hypothalamus tells your pituitary to make it, and then of course TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, tells your thyroid to release more thyroid hormone. So all of these signaling mechanisms for your hormones can be impaired if you have Hashimoto's. Not a good thing. And what will that cause? An estrogen progesterone imbalance. So is it that you look just at estrogen progesterone? No, you've got to look at these and these are things that can be tested on a blood test, FSH and LH. So, and also there's other tests that can look at that too. Another thing that can happen too is it will impair your FSH receptors. Okay, so remember, on the cells, there's these little doorways, there's these little docks for hormones to come in and park their hormone taxi cabs and then get out and go in the cell. And so these receptors on every cell in your body have to function properly. With Hashimoto's, it's found that these receptors get impaired. So if the FSH receptor is impaired, what's going to happen? That's going to affect estrogen production. Not a good thing. So again, we can get an impairment here. All right, or another one. Okay. Another thing that it can do is impair follicle development. Okay, so this can impair the development of an egg. So again, what happens with you women? You guys make eggs in the ovaries, and then those eventually make their way down to the uterus, where they can become fertilized. So again, Hashimoto's in itself can impair the development of this follicle at any stage. So again, not a good thing. So again, Hashimoto's, it's creating all kinds of havoc, all kinds of problems here. What's another thing that it can do? It can alter hepatic. What's hepatic? That's liver detoxification pathways. What's the technical term for that? Biotransformation. You don't have to remember that. Biotransformation. So what happens is Hashimoto's now is affecting our ability of our liver to biotransform hormones, to detoxify hormones. The thing is we think, okay, I've got all these hormones in my system. My ovaries, my uterus produce all these hormones. And what happens to them after they're done? Where do they go? Do they just build up in our system? No. Actually, what they do is all of these hormones, which are what we call fat soluble. When something's fat soluble, it can't exit the bloodstream. It can't get out of the body. It's got to be turned into a water soluble form. So what happens is the liver has this special pathway that it takes things down, that kind of breaks it down, changes it, and turns it into a water soluble form. And that's called biotransformation. And that actually is a type of detoxification. So then those extra hormones, of course, get released from the liver, end up getting into your bile and exiting through your intestines. So this, but if we alter this, now the liver isn't able to get out this excess amount of hormone. And what happens? Now our hormones back up in our system. Now, not only could this potentially back up the liver and produce maybe some liver inflammation, because the liver's under a lot of pressure. It's saying, hey, I'm working as hard as I can, but this darn thyroid's messing me up here, slowing down my biotransformation. So these excess estrogens and progesterones and testosterones get backed up in the system, and they start to cause all kinds of other problems because now you have imbalances in your hormones. All right. And not only on top of that, especially on the estrogen side, there's other estrogens that come into your system. There's these estrogens that come from chemicals, estrogens that come from foods, and even progesterones. There's progesterones that are in cosmetics and things like that too. So again, a lot of these things can come into your system, and your body's like, what the heck? Now we're putting in more. Now I can't get rid of what I've got. So you start to get this definite hormone overload, which causes a total imbalance and problem there. All right. And then another thing that can occur is actually, this is kind of a result, and this is why this is the web of female endocrine dysfunction. Hormone, we just kind of talked about this. Hormone dysregulation. Yikes, that doesn't look like an R. All right, so hormone dysregulation. So again, just like I was talking about, estrogen's a mess, progesterone's a mess, testosterone's a mess, their levels are all over the place, not a good scenario. Or dysregulation from a production standpoint. I'm not producing enough estrogen, I'm not producing enough progesterone, I'm not producing enough testosterone. Again, is this that, hey, let's go in and take some hormones? Well, you could maybe try, but is that going to create more problems with this? You're adding more hormone into the system. What if you already have a liver issue due to this that we just talked about? You just backed up the system more. Also, if it's dysregulated, how do you know exactly how much if you add some in? You could potentially try to look at it on some test results, but with inflammation and Hashimoto's, those hormone readings, I could probably test them via blood or saliva 3 times a day, and they're going to be different levels because you're dysregulated. You got these roller coasters of these hormones. So you can't just go in there and start adding more hormone in. You can actually create more trouble. Now, what's going to happen if this is occurring? Well, one thing is, if you're a menstruating female, now you have altered menses. So now you've got a cycle that's too long, you got a cycle that's too short, you've got a cycle where, hey, my menstrual flow was extremely heavy, my menstrual flow was extremely light, altered menstruation. Another thing that'll go in this category is what's going to happen if that occurs, or with this, we can get infertility. That's an absolute result of this because your hormones are not correct. There's no way you can be fertile. There's no way that whole cycle can occur properly of estrogen, progesterone. Hey, your whole female cycle gets altered. So that's going to, again, alter fertility. And another thing that's very common with this is miscarriage. So in fact, with Hashimoto's and many autoimmune conditions, one of the hallmarks of an autoimmune condition, especially Hashimoto's, is multiple miscarriages. In fact, if a patient comes in and tells me, hey, I've had multiple miscarriages, the first thing we got to think is, do you have an autoimmune condition? So absolutely a potential there. And that can totally fit into this web, we'll call it. What's another factor that can fit in? Dysmenorrhea. Now, this is kind of like the altered menses, but not only could we have periods that are long or short, but also this could even result in an amenorrhea type situation where basically you're not even having a period, or it stops for a while. It's interesting. I've had some women who will say, hey, I've been menopausal now. I'm in early menopause. Let's say they're in their 30s, and they're like, my period stopped. My doctor said that I'm in early menopause, and it's just how it is. It's just how it is. I'm sorry to get on my soapbox there, but that's a little frustrating. It's not just how it is. It's let's find out why. And so this patient that actually had this has probably been a couple of years ago. She had not had a period in probably 2 years. And we started changing things. We started dealing with her health issues. And one day she came in and saw me and she goes, Dr. Pickel, I want to punch you in the face. And I was like, punch me in the face? What did I do? She was saying that laughingly. She wasn't violent. And so she said, I had a period. And I said, what? And she goes, yeah. She goes, I thought I was done. And now I had a period. And and then she had, of course, more after that. So this wasn't a factor that she went into early menopause. Well, if we wanted to call it early menopause, I guess we could call it that. But what really happened there? This whole malfunction created a lack of her ability to have a period. Not good. Her body wasn't ready for that yet. So this dysmenorrhea side can fit in. All right. And then another factor that fits in here with female hormones is this starts to alter, listen to this, thyroid binding. Oh, that word right. Binding proteins. And what the heck does that mean? Okay, so in your body, there's what's called thyroid binding globulin, or in the blood work, it's called TBG. And this is the taxi cab that carries your thyroid hormones to your cells. And it's pretty important. I mean, our thyroid hormones just don't float around in our bloodstream willy-nilly by themselves. No, they have to get into these taxi cabs that carry them into the cells or to those receptors. And again, the interesting thing about this, these thyroid binding globulins, let's put it this way, there's only so many seats inside the taxi cab for estrogens, let's say, for thyroid hormone. And then what can happen is estrogens are stronger. And if we have an estrogen imbalance, let's say estrogens are high in the body, they will boot those thyroid hormones out of the taxi cab. They'll say, hey, you guys, we're bigger and stronger than you. Get out of the taxi, we're taking it over. And then suddenly we have a problem where your binding globulins are overloaded with other hormones and they can't carry the thyroid hormones. Now, how does this fit into what you're feeling? Maybe low thyroid symptoms, and your doctor says you're normal? Well, this is because your TSH still looks good, your T4 still looks good, maybe your T3 even looks good. Now, what's going to show up if you look on your blood work? Or, well, if you look on your blood work, or if you get some blood work run that's going to look at other things besides TSH and T4, you will notice that your T3 uptake is probably low. It potentially could go high. Or if you really want to run the Cadillac of tests for this, it's called, you run the actual thyroid binding globulin and then look at where it's at. Is it low? Is it high? So this could be, this tells us, hey, your hormones are messing with your female hormones are messing with your thyroid hormones. So again, we get another malfunction here. So again, all of these things too, they all tie together. This is our web that we just weaved here of all these things that can come into play that can start to create problems with the female hormones. So let's see if we can, well, maybe it's not, there we go. All right, so again, back to what's important about this. Basically, this is an immune system problem. It's dealing with the immune system. You don't want to come in the first thing you don't want to do is go in and add a bunch of hormones into your system, because this is not a hormone problem. if you have an autoimmune condition, or if you have hypothyroidism and you think it's Hashimoto's, because you have a lot of the Hashimoto's symptoms potentially, then you got to start to think, hey, I can add hormones, I can take certain supplements, I can take this and that, but who's dealing with the immune system? So, and the immune system is crucial as the first step in dealing with these types of issues, or you'll just spin your wheels and you'll never get there, and you'll just kind of keep, gosh, I've tried this, I've tried that, I've tried this, I've tried that, and it's not improving. And again, it's saying, hey, do you have these hypothyroid symptoms that are persisting? Then you can get your thyroid antibodies tested. Do you have Hashimoto's or not? Yes, you can get your female hormones tested, and that'd probably be a good thing. I would say, though, that may not even be accurate. So what I find oftentimes is we need to get the immune system under control first. Change this. We need to get the immune system under control first, get inflammation under control first. Otherwise, if your house is on fire, let's say, if you're inflamed, we're looking at a picture of dysregulation of hormones. They could test your hormones, but that could change any moment again. You'd be amazed on how fast blood work can actually change from moment to moment when the body's inflamed, when you have autoimmune type issues. So the first thing is, once you put the fire out in the house, then you can get a true baseline of your female hormones. If you're menopausal, are my adrenal glands doing their job? Can they do it? Can they make enough estrogen, progesterone, testosterone? If they can't, then they may need some help. Maybe you need hormones. Maybe you need adrenal support. Maybe you need something like that. Or if you are premenopausal, if you're a menstruating female, yeah, what's going on there? What can you do to balance that? What can you do to get rid of these extra estrogens, or maybe you don't have enough estrogen, progesterone? So again, we've got to look at maybe the ovaries and uterus are malfunctioning. Why? Is it a signaling issue that's messed up, like we saw on the web, or on the web of issues? Or is it the ovaries and uterus are just having problems themselves? So I think these are the things that have to be found out. There's not a magical pill or supplement for all this. I wish I could say, hey, start taking this supplement today, this supplement today. The key, if you're having these types of issues, we've got to look first at the immune system and inflammation, and then we can kind of figure out where to go from there. So I hope this was some great information for everybody, and everybody enjoyed this. Thanks everybody for watching. I'd like to do a shout out to Miriam there. I hope everybody enjoyed, and do share us. Share us on Facebook, YouTube, and now share us on Twitter. Exciting stuff there. So you can share us anywhere, anytime. We really appreciate it. We want to get the word out to help people who have these types of issues. All right. God bless, and have a wonderful, beautiful day.